Is World War III coming? More and more headlines say yes. Russia's war in Ukraine, the Iran-Israel conflict, nuclear threats. Is the old world already gone? We talk about this with Peter Eltsov, political scientist, historian, and professor at the U.S. National Defense University. Peter, hi, it's always a pleasure to have you here in our studio.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me too to be talking to you again. Yes, this is a tough question, and what I like to say first, what I'm going to say is exclusively my interpretations. I do work for the U.S. government. I do not talk on the behalf of the U.S. government, and particularly this is a frightening subject. People have been talking, particularly recently, about the potential of World War III. Putin said he is worried about it. Trump famously or infamously accused Zelensky of playing with World War III. Fiona Hill, Trump's advisor and a very big supporter of Ukraine, I mean his previous advisor on national security with a focus on Eurasia, said literally World War III had already begun in some form because of the way countries were reacting to the ongoing war in Ukraine. I believe she said it after the beginning of full-scale war of Russia against Ukraine. So what I would say, I'm not a prophet. I'm not going to predict anything. And clearly, I don't want another global war to happen. But there are trends today which are very frightening. And I have 7 trends for you, which I would call trends in tension. And we could discuss them if you'd like more in detail. So these 7 trends are, the first one is tremendous disbalance of power in the international relations. This is probably the most important and frightening trend, which means that it's never been so bad since probably pre-World War II or pre-World War I. Meaning even during the Cold War, at least since the Cuban Missile Crisis, there were 2 centers of power, right? And some kind of understanding that they couldn't go to a direct war against each other. Then there was 1990s with American hegemony, so-called humanitarian interventionism. Then the Pentagon had that framework, they China, Iran, North Korea, and radical Islam as the key threats. Now is definitely a more complicated situation because there are rising powers like Pakistan, Turkey. So there is really no balance of power, which is, according to the realist theory in international relation, is truly a frightening situation. The second trend is the rise of really radical forms and new forms of nationalism. One of them is the idea of the civilization state, meaning that countries like Russia, China, today probably India, Iran, and maybe Turkey, think of themselves as nation states. This is a very exceptionalist idea. They think that they are above the nation states. They think that they have their own norms, their own rules. There are no same human rights for them. It's everything's different. Another radical form of nationalism is so-called primordialism, which means that countries want to have a very, very ancient continuous past. And that's, of course, is a great cause for war, because, say, if Russia thinks that Ukraine is Russia and its history starts there, or they even think that they're possibly the descendants of the Aryans or something like that, some absolutely mythological stuff. And finally, we have a rebirth in nationalism of territorial expansionism. So like really classic imperialism, let's conquer the country and make it part of your own country. Number 3 is political polarization and the rise of right-wing movements. Who could think that in Germany we could have a politician from a party which came second in the last election who said that Hitler and the Nazis are just bird shit in more than 1,000 years of successful German history? That's Alexander Kauland, one of the leaders of Alternative für Deutschland, a prominent new German party. This is also the man who said that Ukraine should be divided like Czechoslovakia in Russian Ukraine and Ukrainian Ukraine. He also called Ukraine the alte russische Siedlungsraum, the old Russian settlement space, very reminiscent of the Nazi concept of Lebensraum, the living space. I mean, it's happening all over the world. Italy has a prime minister. She seems to be pretty decent now, but you shouldn't forget she comes from a party which is basically a successor of Mussolini's parties, the brother of Italy. Modi, Narendra Modi in India, was a member of RSS, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the very nationalist Hindu organization, some members of which openly praised Hitler. Number 4, we have a return of classical geopolitics, like Nazi geopolitics, discussed openly in Russia. They praised the famous British scholar Mackinder, who talked about the famous theory, the heartland theory, saying that Eurasia is the most important place, that Russia plays this significant role. That's why basically the summary of this theory, the one who controls Eastern Europe controls Eurasia and controls the world. They openly discuss this on the Russian media, the Russian news. Another one is the intensification, the tremendous intensification of hybrid warfare, irregular warfare, with social media, with conspiracy theories. I mean, there were always people in the world who believed that, say, we didn't land on the moon, or the Maya people had space shuttles. But we didn't have these people in the government. In the United States Congress, I'm not going to call names, there are people who believe in the QAnon theory, which says that all Democrats are pedophiles.
Wait, Peter. You said all Democrats what?
Are pedophiles. There is a QAnon theory which says that President Trump is going to have like arrests one day. There will be a big event when he will arrest a number of Democrats because there is like a pedophile circle. Oh. Okay, I'll tell you. It's a Marjorie Greene, the congresswoman, I believe, from South Carolina, who tends to, at least she didn't deny that when like asked on 60 Minutes whether she believed in this theory, she did not deny that. And yes, there are, it goes back to like the suicide of Epstein, because some people think that apparently Clinton or someone else killed him. So there's a lot of conspiracy. Like I met a woman in North Carolina who told me that the whole war in Ukraine was a fake, that it was filmed by CNN, like in the movie Wag the Dog. And I thought she was joking, but she was damn serious.
You know, Peter,
I didn't know what to say.
Peter, the percentage of stupid people on Earth is always the same in every era. So,
but you know the difference today, people in the government, there are people in the government who are using and talking about these ideas. I met German officers.
That's not true.
Senior officers who believed that Bucha was a fake, who completely believed what the Russian media says, that it was staged, that these were actors, that the Ukrainian army did that to embarrass the Russian army. I was talking to senior German officers who believed that. So this is frightening, and that's part of disinformation, that part of that hybrid warfare, which is clearly produced those stories. I mean, if you think during the 2016 election in the United States, there was a kind of a motto, if Hillary wins, there will be World War III. And then people did some research and it turned out that that thing came from RT. So they're professionally working on that. So people were saying, oh, it's scary. If Hillary Clinton wins, there will be World War III. Where is the foundation for that? What's the basis? So the last two things I like to mention, so aside from irregular warfare and the things I mentioned, there is a rise of non-state actors. Today we're in a situation when a person like Elon Musk is richer than most states in the world. He can wage a war on his own if he would want to. He has so much money. And think about it, he was directly contacted by the White House not to stop his Starlink and capacities in Ukraine during the Biden administration. So he is important, almost as a nation state. And the final thing today, we have basically nuclear proliferation galore. States like Germany, Poland, South Korea, Taiwan, Iran, all wanting to acquire nuclear weapons. I think we are entering that stage. Some would argue maybe it will provide more security. I don't think so. I think it's a very, very frightening situation.
Yeah, but you mentioned about the imbalance of power in international relations. Yes. How is the current imbalance differs from previous periods of tension?
Well, it's very different. I would say we are back to pre-World War II, pre-World War I situation, because during the Cold War, there was understanding, at least since the Cuban Missile Crisis, that the United States and Russia and the Soviet Union could not go against each other in a hot war. So they could have proxy wars like Afghanistan, Vietnam, Angola, and so forth. Then the 1990s, there was a time of American kind of hegemony, what they called then humanitarian interventionism. Then there was a war on terror. I mean, it's very different because there is absolutely no, I would say no respect for each other. There are multiple players, like a country like Pakistan has recently said that if Israel nukes Iran, they will obliterate Israel, and they have a nuclear capacity. So I would say it's just the number of actors, powerful actors, like say Turkey and Russia, were discussing the division of Syria when Assad was still in power. That was like old-style geopolitics. There was a meeting of, I believe, of Erdogan and Putin in Sochi. They were sitting like in front of a map and literally looking at the map and deciding who controls what, without the participation of the United States, the EU. So it's just provides complete unpredictability, I would say.
Mm-hmm. But has U.S. global leadership truly ended? And if it's so, the question is who's stepping into to fill the vacuum?
I wouldn't say it has ended, but it's on its way, yes, to a more diverse, I guess I hate to say it, but what Putin likes to use the word multipolar world. Yes, there are more centers of power today in the world, and who's going to step in? I mean, we see that Russia is stepping in. China is definitely going to step in. I mean, it is already economically providing, I would say it's a form of economic colonialism. They go like all over the world, and it's cultural and economic. They very active in Africa, in South America. They also culturally founding the so-called Confucius centers all over the world, where they provide their understanding of the world, their vision of the world. They have this concept of the harmonious world, which is, of course, harmonious according to Chinese rules, China's rules. So, yeah, we have different powers stepping in. We have regional hegemons. I mentioned Pakistan. They definitely played a very important role in making sure that the United States leaves Afghanistan and that Taliban comes back to power. We have Turkey playing a very significant role in Syria and in the neighborhood in general. So there are a number of candidates for leadership, both globally and regionally.
And what is the idea of civilization state, and why is it gaining traction now?
Well, I would say this is a very frightening idea, very exceptionalist, very, to some degree, racist, because you basically say that your state is more important than anyone else. And in one of his last Valdai meetings, Putin also said that those civilization states with control, he used the German term, the Großräume, the large spaces, the spheres of influence, basically saying, like, okay, let's divide the world. Russia will control its former imperial space, right? Which is the former Soviet Union, the former Russian Empire, which includes like the Caucasus, Central Asia, parts of Eastern Europe, Ukraine, of course, Belarus. Then China, let's give Taiwan to China and East Asia. Then maybe Iran is a hegemon in the region and so forth. But what it means, well, what's the most dangerous things about it is that they say that they have their own set of rules. So when in my youth, I remember the biggest kind of event was when Mikhail Gorbachev spoke in the United Nations. He said, which was incredible, for still the leader of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union at that time, he said that there are no working class values, there are no class values, there are only human values, and there are values across the world. We passed that stage, it's gone. Now they're saying that basically there are no general human values from the point of view of a civilization state. Russia has its own values, whether it's human values, whether it's law, international law. There's no international law to them anymore. Same China. So this creates a situation that you have different sets of values across the world and a hierarchy of states. So if you're Russia or China or Iran, you are much more important than your friends, Germany, Italy, or Ukraine, or say Taiwan or Vietnam. So it's basically a hierarchy, more important states and less important states. That's what it is about. And interestingly, for example, in Russia, in the history of the Russian and Soviet Empire, it's never been the case. The government, whether it was a very imperialist government, say of Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, or Stalin, they did not portray their country, at least verbally, in these exact terms.
Listen, Peter, I'm listening to you and I'm kind of frightened about everything you're saying, honestly, because even after Russia's becoming a real terroristic state by attacking Ukraine, it still seems like they can feel the vacuum that we're talking about.
Yeah, I guess they feel extremely special today. They feel as a very exceptionalist civilization. Think about it. The clauses to the Constitution, the recent clauses, they made it really unbelievably exceptionalist. That's never been the case in Russian history, neither under Tsars nor under the Bolsheviks, because the clauses say, like, all wars were just, like every single war that Russia has fought in its entire history. In their constitution, think about it, they said that Russian history is a 1,000-year-old history. That was a complete direct assault on Ukraine. Basically, they were trying to say our history starts in the 9th century with the baptism of Rus by Prince Vladimir. No university today in the world, at least in the Western world, starts Russian history with Kievan Rus. They started with usually with 15th, 16th century, with the beginning of Russian Empire, imperialism, the kind of with Ivan IV, maybe Ivan III, and so forth. So this kind of exceptionalism on every level, separatism is not allowed. They say that they're this unique, great civilization. I mean, they even say there is a clause that talks about the continuity of Russian history, which basically they say communism was a continuity of Russian imperialism. Now Putinism is a continuous period from whatever, the Soviet Union and so forth. So, yeah, this is pretty frightening. There is no fault. They've done nothing, absolutely nothing wrong, according to them, in their entire history, and this is a great civilization. And I think China thinks the same. Think about, very interesting thing, during the Cultural Revolution, they were denying their past. Now, they're basically combined. They're not opening Marxist-Leninist centers in, say, Venezuela or Guatemala or somewhere in Africa. They're smart enough. No one cares about Marxism, Leninism today, or Maoism. They're opening Confucius centers. So they're merging Confucianism with communism, which you would think it's absurd from the point of view of the Cultural Revolution. The same from the point of view of the Bolshevik Revolution. You would think it's absurd to combine Tsarism with communism, but they did today, right? Mm-hmm. The greatest symbol, think about it, the order, Putin brought back that order of the hero of labor. It used to be the hero of the socialist labor. Yeltsin canceled it. It was the biggest civilian award. So think about it, what it has on it. It has a red star and a double-headed eagle. Think how many white army officers who fought in 1920s in the Civil War against the communist regime, like turning in their graves, that today the double-headed eagle, the symbol of the Romanovs empire, is embossed on the red gold star of the symbol of communism. It's incredible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Peter, I want to shift a bit to Europe. And my question is, regarding everything you said, what kind of a new security architecture do you envision for Europe, particularly?
So, unfortunately, I think Putin may be right. Well, depending of how the U.S. proceeds. I mean, the last, just a day ago, right, there was a NATO summit, and the U.S. at least is not withdrawing from NATO like some people predicted. And I think it will stay in NATO for the time being. But we definitely see already a split in Europe on the question of Ukraine, as Fiona Hill said, how countries react to the full-scale war in Ukraine. Orban is of course, the best example, who completely doesn't want to have anything to do with Ukraine, doesn't want Ukraine in the EU, in NATO, and all of that. Now there is Slovakia too. So there are countries where I mentioned Alternative für Deutschland in Germany, which came second. If Alternative für Deutschland wins in the future, that will be over for Ukraine in terms of help. So the new architecture of Europe, meaning there could be more pro-Russian and less pro-Russian countries. There are countries which will absolutely stay very anti-Russian in its current Russian political configuration against Putin's regime. These countries are definitely all of the Baltic states, all of the Scandinavia, Finland, Sweden, the new members of NATO, then Denmark, the Netherlands, most likely, and definitely the UK under any political system, whether it's Labour or Tory. France, Germany, and I would say Italy and Spain are questionable, because in France, we may see the French rally winning potentially the next election. I believe it's 2027. Germany is safe for now for several years. But who knows? Alternative für Deutschland is extremely powerful. In Germany, I've lived in Germany and know its political culture pretty well. Unfortunately, they do have a lot of what in German they call Putin verstehe. The one who understands Putin in colloquial English, you could call it Putin's whisperers. These are people who actually have a sympathy for Putin and kind of understanding. They do buy all this propaganda, which is very active in Germany. So we may see, the split of Europe on that issue. We could see a new political and military alliance. And I think for Ukraine, it would be very smart, which I believe has already started, for example, with the UK, to do bilateral treaties with different European countries who would continue helping Ukraine.
Yes, but is the world on the brink of a new wave of nuclear proliferation?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I think we'll see, I will predict here, we'll see Germany soon having a nuclear weapon. They definitely scientifically have a full potential. If North Korea could do it and Pakistan could do it, like everyone can do it, Poland definitely wants a nuclear weapon. There is no question. They're so pathologically afraid, and justly so, of Russian imperialism. We'll see, despite of this very successful bombing of Iranian nuclear facilities just last week by President Trump, it can make them only give more desire to produce nuclear weapons now. So they may get it. Then Taiwan clearly will want to have nuclear weapons at some point. South Korea potentially, particularly if the United States continues to withdraw from the world. And on the way to NATO, to the NATO summit, President Trump also kind of questioned the meaning of Article 5. So he said, well, it depends on the definition. So that's, of course, freaked out many Europeans. So in this scenario, definitely we will have a tremendous nuclear proliferation. Actually, you know, what's interesting, you probably know of John Mearsheimer. He's definitely not a favorite person in Ukraine, a very famous American political scientist from the University of Chicago, who basically blamed the US and NATO for the war in Ukraine. In the 1990s, he actually was very much against Ukraine giving up its nuclear weapons. Give him some credit. In the past, yeah, he was absolutely saying that shouldn't have been done. He's a classic, what do you call it, in political science, a school of classical realism. So yeah, he blames the US and NATO for basically accepting the Russian narrative on the war in Ukraine, but he was against at that time.
Yes, but okay, if the countries like Germany or Poland pursue nuclear weapons, what would that mean for NATO in general?
Well, some people predict it's slow decay and basically death. I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical about the future of NATO because we have countries, for example, like Turkey.
Well, I'm pretty skeptical, Peter. I'm pretty skeptical about the future of the United Nations. You know how we call it here.
I agree with you, Dad. So they, I'm sorry, my phone is calling, and it's somewhere far away. Maybe you can cut off that part.
Okay, yeah, sure. But it's, I mean,
I'll just cut it. I apologize. Let me answer this question again. I shut down. I apologize. It was in a different room. So, yes, I agree with you completely that the United Nations are dead. They've done nothing in like it's a decade. It's a very symbolic organization. They can't prevent wars. They don't have really like a force to enforce anything like peacekeepers or anything. So this organization today is pretty much useless. And its Security Council does not reflect at all the geopolitical situation in the world today. Because when we talked about the powerful states, why, for example, India is not in a Security Council? It's a very powerful, important state. Why Germany is not in a Security Council? So this is a legacy, a direct legacy of the World War II, and it needs a major change. This is a completely today a dead organization. I agree with you.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm just curious, why have conspiracy theories, ideas, have such a strong effect? And it has become a strong tool of a hybrid war.
I guess it's the social media. A lot has to do with that because, say, in the good old days, you would say like there was a journalist in New York Times, like two famous guys or two anchors on like CNN and some other network, BBC, and they were fact checkers. So today, like with a tremendous amount of information pouring through different venues, there is no way you can check it fast. And then there, like I heard today, there are like fact checkers do not exist much more, even in serious media. So yeah, with that, there is a tremendous opportunity for all these people. And yeah, there are people who do that for money, I think, like some people who say, right, that like there were nuclear weapons in ancient India, or the Maya people had space shuttles. That's an industry. They just write books and produce that information. But then there is what you call in security studies malinformation. So when the state actor, like Russia or China or Iran, specifically produces some disinformation, for example, to have an effect on the election in a country. So, and that's becoming really an easy tool. Think about it. I just read a few days ago that BBC has just started its service in Polish. They didn't have that because Poland is really subject to a lot of misinformation from Russia. So BBC, I mean, they've elected just recently a very conservative, populist
president. Yes.
Yeah, president. So yeah, this is the world we live in, and I don't have a good answer to that. That's I mean, except for the power of the social media and the multitude of information, the amount of information which goes through it. But yeah, that's a fantastic tool to use. I mean, Russia is extremely skillful. And the problem is that democratic states are really vulnerable. That's a huge problem because we can't shut down the media in the United States, right? Or in any democratic states. You can't just completely control everything. So it's actually, what is very interesting, it's not illegal in the United States to lie in a democratic country. If you're even presidential candidate and you produce absolute bunch of lies, it's not illegal. It's okay. There is no law which prohibits you to lie. You can say whatever you want, right? If it doesn't harm anyone directly. In a totalitarian state, you can just shut down everything. So if you have to watch 24/7 in Russia, 60 Minutes with Skabyev and Popov, and then Sunday evening with Vladimir Solovyov, and then the Great Game with Nikonov and Dmitry Simes, that's all you have. And when you have an overwhelming amount of information here, I meet people in the United States all the time who believe the Russian propaganda and who believe that Ukraine has started the war, in Donbass, that Crimea belongs historically to Russia, and so forth. So it depends, because you have access here to this information, right? And you can choose what you want to listen to.
And what is more, when I was on the scholarship at the United Nations, there are still Russian propaganda media outlets like Sputnik and RIA Novosti, which are absolutely lying, and they are the main tools of Russian propaganda worldwide. So, and they are sitting in New York in the organization who's supposed to protect the world from such people and such lie. And that's the problem you're saying, the freedom of speech.
Yeah, but that's a big dilemma. What can we do? We can't, because if we ban them and ban all of that, then you become an authoritarian state. I mean, think about it. There are conspiracy theories. I forgot the name of this guy who was saying that Sandy Hook, this murder of children, mass murder, was staged by the US government or something. He lost in court because the parents said that he caused them a personal pain because they actually lost these children. So, yeah, there are, like in the United States on the domestic level, there are tons of conspiracy theories. And these people can openly talk. They talk about conspiracies against the government. They say that, as I mentioned, that Bill Clinton allegedly killed Epstein and all of that. And you can openly say that without any evidence. That's a big problem. And that's a fantastic tool for authoritarian states to use against democratic states.
But you mentioned Elon Musk, and I have a maybe final question. How does the rise of powerful non-state actors change the international security landscape?
Very significantly. These people can, think about it. In the case of Ukraine, I brought up an example. He was an actual actor in the Russian-Ukrainian war. And he is. Yes. So a lot depends on him. He had an exchange with your former ambassador in Germany, I believe, Melnik, at that time on Twitter. So, but he has a power which no one has like him. So these people, if they get involved in those conflicts, and he was also, they play a very significant role. He was also played a tremendously important role in Donald Trump's 2024 election campaign. He contributed a lot of money. He was powerful through his information campaign to help him win. So they definitely will play more and more of a role. There is this political theory now coming back. It's called New Medievalism. It was formulated in, I believe, in 1970s, but now it's coming back, where non-state actors in general, organizations, it's not just individuals like Elon Musk, it could be organizations, quasi-states, playing a more and more significant role in international relations. So it's not just going to be up to nation states to determine the current geopolitics. It's going to be up to these very powerful individuals. There is no question, and there is going to be more conspiracies about them. Think about how many conspiracies were, for example, about Bill Gates. And it turned out to be completely not true. This is a very different example. The man actually recently said that he's going to spend all his money for charity for the rest of his life. He's going to leave himself $1 billion. I guess $1 billion is definitely enough for one person to spend the rest of his life. But all these theories about him and COVID, about him cheating people, no one could think that the man maybe actually is a decent man and wants to help the humanity. But on the other hand, we can have a person like him or a person like Elon Musk. So it's definitely going to be very interesting and frightening to watch how these individuals going to act.
Yeah, Peter, sometimes people just don't know what fact-checking is. It's so simple. It's so simple. Yeah, Peter, thank you so much for answering my questions, because it's a very hard topic. And whenever it's going to be next, whether it's going to happen, the World War III or not, well, we will witness it, I hope. I mean, I'm not hoping to witness the next World War, but I hope to stay alive anyway.
Me too, and I hope, and let's finish for now, at least on a positive note, that Ukraine will survive through this trying times as a nation state, as an independent nation state.
Oh, definitely. God bless Ukraine. True.
Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава. Thank you so much, Peter, and I wish to see you again in our studio.